Welcome to the Fuzzy Mike, the interview series, the podcast, whatever Kevin wants to call it. It's Fuzzy Mike.
Hello, and thank you for joining me on this episode of the Fuzzy Mike. Imagine this. You've been a top-rated high school and college athlete in your teens and early 20s. Now, you're a vice president for a global manufacturing company owned by, one of the world's richest people, Warren Buffett. You've been happily married for just over 2 years. Life is great. Then, on a seemingly uneventful July day in 2009, this amazing life that you've been living, for all intents and purposes, it ends. After you dive off a dock into water that you thought was deeper than it actually was, and you break your neck on the lake floor. Doctors proclaim that you're lucky to have even survived. But are you really? You're paralyzed from the neck down. You're a quadriplegic for the rest of your life. That's how life unfolded 15 years ago for my guest, Scott Fedor. I learned about Scott when I was researching extreme athletes. I like to talk to extreme athletes, and so I research them from time to time to invite them on the show. Extreme athletes are some of the most mentally tough people I know. Mental toughness can oftentimes keep depressed and suicidal people alive during low moments. So I like talking with mentally strong athletes to get tips and advice for us to incorporate in our battle to stay alive. Scott Fedor was a guest on a particular podcast I stumbled upon. I was blown away by him. While I was listening to him tell the story about, how his life changed in an instant, I wondered if I would have the mental mettle to endure what he has endured. And if I was strong enough to survive, would I have the positive demeanor that Scott has? Honestly, I think I know myself well enough to answer no to both of those questions. Scott Fedor is next level mentally tough. And I told him, I know Navy SEALs. I know MMA fighters who have won world championships. I know boxing world champions, but I don't know anybody as strong as you, Scott. So where does it come from?
I would say two things. First of all, I think I was fortunate enough. I had a strong upbringing with my father and my mother that even from a relatively young age, I always remember just being instilled with think positive, you can do it. My dad worked for himself. He was a salesman. And I mean, I grew up cutting my teeth listening to Earl Nightingale and Norman Vincent Peale and Zig Ziglar tapes on the way to when he was driving me to practices. So I kind of always, I don't want to say took it for granted, but there was always some kind of motivational talk or lesson just being thrown out there. And I think, especially as you're a younger kid, you just start absorbing stuff. You may not realize what you're actually listening to or digesting at that point in time, but it's like osmosis. It just gets sucked into your brain somewhere and it rattles around there. And then when you need it at some point in your journey, hopefully you're able to access it. But that upbringing, as well as I think sports had a lot to do with it from an early age, whether it was baseball, football, I wrestled, played basketball, swam, played rugby, tried everything, and ultimately football and baseball is what really stuck, which I played up and through college. And I think just that whole idea of having to work hard, knowing, especially in the practices and especially with football, when you think about the double sessions over the summer, the conditioning, there's, probably 3 or 4 times a week when you're like, this isn't for me. And you kind of just want to quit because it's hard, frankly. But you stick with it, you persevere, you continue to win each day and come back the next day. And not that it gets easier and easier, but you start realizing, okay, I've gotten through this, I can get through it again. And I think that whole mindset, it just becomes what do they say? If you do something 2, 4, 5 weeks in a row, it can kind of become a habit. I think when you're just, and I don't want to say going through the motions because obviously you're training, you're working hard, but you just keep doing it and doing it. And I think the idea of showing up, dealing with the pain, dealing with the adversity, dealing with the uncertainty just becomes a habit. And did I lose you?
No, not at all. I'm
Oh,
still
I'm sorry.
here.
I'm sorry.
I'm
I
riveted by what you're saying.
and I think it just becomes habit. And fortunately, once I got hurt and once I was forced to have to dig deep to really deal with something I had never planned for or I don't want to say prepared for because in a way I guess I was preparing for it, but wasn't prepared for it to happen. Um, that's when you kind of then have to channel all that resiliency and hopefully remember that your whole life there's been opportunities before that you dealt with setbacks, you dealt with adversity, you got through them. So this is certainly a completely different kind of adversity, a completely different kind of um, challenge, but that mindset. And I always tell people the fact that the one thing I can still have complete control over is my attitude. Um, Attitude equals altitude, as they say, and that makes all the difference. And it doesn't always, at least for me, it didn't happen right away. There's it takes some time, as you can imagine, to have to digest and have to process something that changes your life in a matter of seconds, going from being a healthy, physical, able-bodied athlete and guy in the prime of my life to diving into a lake and snapping my neck in a heartbeat. Um, that that's an adjustment, as you can imagine. But
You didn't just snap your neck. You
uh,
internally decapitated
I
yourself.
yeah, that's what they call it. They call it internal decapitation, which it was from the C1 through C6. All those vertebrae were shattered. In my neck, if you imagine I was diving face first, so imagine my forehead hitting the lake bottom with such force that it pushed my head back. And if I can get a little graphic for a second, just imagine what that would do to your vertebrae if the back of your head kind of touched the back of your shoulders. So you just can imagine how severe and how just impactful that impact was.
Well, wouldn't that kill a lot of
It
people?
I think it would, and I to this day I don't know why I'm alive. Um,
Oh, I do.
yeah, well, yeah, we can get to that maybe, but
Well, we will.
just from a pure physiological sense, yes. The doctor said this just should have killed you, and yeah, I was 33 when it happened. I was still relatively in good shape. I was strong. I was working out. I had strong cardio because that helped save me too. Because after I hit that lake bed, I didn't pass out because it wasn't like plowing into hard cement. It was plowing into soft mud. But I just hit it with such force that my neck had nowhere to go but back. But I didn't lose consciousness, and it would turn out it was 33 inches of water. And I was floating there, wide awake, looking down at this. My All of my family relatives were all up in the house, which was 100 yards away at the time, and I ended up drowning myself. Said my prayers after who knows how long I was in the water for, but just all the emotions that were going through my mind, the guilt for having feeling selfish that I dove in and broke my neck and was now taking myself out of other people's lives as well. I was married at the time, so I had a tremendous amount of guilt, feeling I just ruined everyone else's life. Then quickly, fear, realizing that I still can't put into words and at that point, I was 100% convinced I was going to die. When you know that you're about to die, um, for me, it wasn't this peaceful, calm, reassuring, okay, this is my time feeling. It was just the trauma around the way that I was going to die and what had happened. My heart was beating 1,000 miles a minute. That's all I could hear, filling up the entire lake in my ears was pounding my heart. I thought my heart was going to explode and it would be a heart attack that would kill me. But just processing all that, having the fear, and then ultimately the sadness, realizing I am going to die and I'm going to die alone, cold, wet, no one to hug, no one to be there with me, no one to say goodbye to. And at that point, I said some prayers and I swallowed water I opened my mouth just to drown myself to get it over with. What I didn't realize was the family dog, Eddie, had followed me down to the lake. And it was his barking, realizing that something was wrong with Scott. He usually jumps in, jumps out, that alerted others in the house. And they saw what had happened. They came running down and obviously, pulled me out of the water. But going back to that decapitation, one, the impact was so severe, but I also think they didn't know what had happened. And I had a stroke and I had a heart attack. All they knew is I was floating down in the water, not moving. So they pulled me out, and I'm sure I was getting jostled around. The last thing on their mind was to stabilize my neck, stabilize my head, and kind of keep me from, doing further damage. And I wasn't breathing. So they had to hoist me up onto a pier, put me down there, and start doing CPR. And ultimately, the emergency vehicles went to the wrong side of the lake. So for about 45 minutes, and again, God was on my side that day with a variety of things, but my ex-sister-in-law happened to be an ICU nurse. So her and one of her friends were there, and they just went back and forth, taking turns doing CPR and other life-saving measures. And I think all that, obviously, I'm grateful for it. It kept me alive, but I also think there was just a lot of extra trauma constantly being pushed on the neck, on my body. And yeah, I don't know. The doctors, after they did about a 16-hour surgery to literally reattach my head to my body, one of them told my family this is the one of the worst injuries I've ever seen in my life, and I've done what I can do. Now it's up to God, but you need to prepare yourself because Scott's he's been injured pretty significantly. And to tell you the truth, you know, he never said it, but I don't even know if the doctors expected me to pull through with just the level. I think they implied that the level of injury that was there and how long it had taken them to kind of stabilize, reattach, um, put in all the hardware, the bone grafts, everything else that I would need to allow my body to at some point heal. Who knows what was going through their mind, whether or not they thought that this would be survivable, but it was. And the one thing I want to say, just going back to your original question, where do I find that? I realize that I have been through a pretty traumatic experience, but I do a lot of speaking, and I always tell individuals, you you may not realize how resilient you are until you truly are up against it and you truly are tested. And while I appreciate what others tell me and can understand why they think that I am have shown strength in the face of adversity, I tell everyone, don't sell yourself short, because if the roles were reversed and I was sitting where you were right now, talking to someone in my situation, I'd probably say there's no way I'd be able to handle that. I wouldn't have been able to find the strength, but I did, and I don't think I give myself credit for that, yes, but I don't think I'm the exception by any means. I think a lot of individuals um, would be able to find that strength in them if they're up against it, because I do think people by nature are resilient. But what does help that resiliency, I will say, is having the right attitude. And if you let your attitude get away from you, then you are doomed, I think, physically, because where the mind goes, the body will follow. And if you're not in that right mindset and ready, like it's like a pregame, you get your speech from your coach, ready to go out there. If you're not in that right mindset and ready to take on the task at hand, then why even show up? So
Well,
that was the
we
challenge.
we know that the mind is infinitely tougher and infinitely stronger than our physical bodies. Navy
Yeah.
SEAL David Goggins has
Yep.
a saying that when you think you're done, your body is only at 40%, but it's your
Yep.
mind telling you,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So,
And that's a very tough. Uh, we also know how powerful and convincing the mind can be. So it is very tough to kind of ignore your mind when it's telling you, "Oh, stop, time to give up," and trust that, nope, there is more in me. I'm only at 40%, like you said. So you have to trust your mind, but you also have to, keep your mind in check at times, I guess.
We're talking to Scott Fedor. You can read Scott's book. It's called Headstrong: How a Broken Neck Strengthened My Spirit. And it's a fascinating book. That what you're hearing now is what you'll be able to read in the book. It's available on Amazon. You said a few things in there that I kind of want to unravel, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Okay, so the first one was your athleticism in high school and in college. Did that prepare you to go through the physical distress that you went through?
Absolutely. In a couple ways. First of all, at the time that I was injured, I was still pretty active working out and had recently, I say recently, probably 6 months prior, taken up a more extensive cardio regimen. And the doctors did tell my family that because swallowing the water and just dealing with the pneumonia that came with on the onset of the injury right away, they said if his lungs had not been in the shape that they were, he might not, even because I was on a breathing machine. I did have a ventilator breathing, but even so, his body might not be strong enough to accept and allow all this. So I certainly think at that moment in time, that my body was fortunately strong enough. And also all the work that I had done up to that moment in time, from all the workouts starting in my early teens, um, uh, strength conditioning up until that point in time, all the other challenges on a football field, a baseball field, a basketball court, wrestling mat, whatever you what have you. Certainly, I think that just allowed my body um, to get used to being uh, stressed, to get used to being you know uh, bent around, pushed around, if you will say, and kind of starting to learn like, okay, there are limits that my body can exceed, and just because I'm getting bruised or beaten or pushed around in a moment, the body is tough, it is strong, and I think muscles have a memory as well, and I think that being in that situation and being in a spot where my um, body suddenly just took on a tremendous amount of trauma. I think it kind of, to a certain extent, fell back on all of its training, realizing, okay, and maybe that is why I'm alive, and maybe that's why that injury didn't kill me because, okay, we just took a pretty hard shot, but this is nothing new. For the past several years and decades, Scott's been kind of putting his body through the ringer at times.
Well,
So
you
I
had
do think the athleticism had a lot to do with it.
well,
Absolutely.
not only the athleticism, but you had also said that going through two a days, you're just like mentally win the day,
Yep.
just win the day,
Absolutely.
and that's
Absolutely.
what you have to do every day to overcome or deal with your paralysis.
Yes, absolutely. I have a saying on it's not my saying. I found it in a book that my father used to read when I was laying in a hospital bed. It's actually from a book called The Mind Gym, and it's about an athlete as well as a psychologist who talk about the mental side of athletics. Great book. It's worth checking out. But there's a saying in that book: "Inch by inch is a cinch, yard by yard is awfully hard." And that's kind of a take on the whole win the day, especially with a spinal cord injury. This is an injury that, if you're looking for nerves to regenerate themselves, or if you're looking for other types of recovery, uh, it's not going to happen right away. It's going to take time. So, inch by inch, you really have to realize that there's going to be a lot of little gains, incremental gains that will add up in time, but you can't just come out swinging for the fences. And that all goes back to that win the day mentality of whether you're on a dusty field doing two a days, or shooting 100 different foul shots after practice. It's just inch by inch. It's one step at a time, and those inches add up to feet. Those feet, yards, miles. And it's not until all of a sudden, you're at the end of the season, you look back like, wow, I made it through all those two a days. I made it through a grueling season. I ended up becoming a state champion. I mean, wow, look. But those aren't really immediately on your mind on those hot August or hot July days when you're just trying to kind of make it around the track for another lap before you pass out. So it really is staying in the moment, focusing on those little inches, trying to win each day, realizing that the rest will start to take care of itself as you pile up pile up those little victories.
So then, right after the accident, right after the injury to now, how has win the day, how has it changed?
I, I think the goals are different. When I was first injured, a lot of it was about um, the little things. I call them little, but they were obviously big. But the little victories that I had to keep managing were things like learning how to breathe again on my own without a ventilator, learning how to tolerate sitting up without passing out, understanding how the blood pressure and the body temperature and other um, physiological factors were affected by a spinal cord injury, being able to go to therapy and try to get through an afternoon of whether it's kind of shrugging his shoulder or getting stretched out and not getting nauseous, not passing out, and then making it through each night, lying in bed at night, questioning God, trying to relive a million times in my mind what had happened, trying to bargain for a second chance, if you will, to take all this away. Those were all the things and the demons I was dealing with, as well as the challenges physically where I was trying to win the day. Now it's much different. When I was first hurt and I woke up, the first thought of my mind was, damn, I'm still paralyzed. And, I was there for a while. As I mentioned in my book, when I wake up now, my first thought is, damn, I slept an extra hour. I got to get going. There's a lot I want to do. So that mind shift has totally changed. And my win today now are the daily work that I throw myself into. And by work, I mean I was able to start a pretty successful foundation. Now it's managing that foundation on a day-by-day basis, reviewing applications, talking with other facilities, other vendors, other individuals to find the right, connecting them with the resources they're looking for. It's doing some writing, which I still try to do. It's just managing uh, the day-to-day business activities, if you will, as well as kind of the work and the service and the advocacy that I've thrown myself into. I don't find my winning the day so much about me trying to get better as much as trying to do better with the projects and those that I'm serving, if that makes sense. So it's kind of gone from I don't wake up and try to work out to get myself stronger. I wake up now and I try to do things that are going to help me be able to contribute to society more and be able to help serve others,
It's
whether
very
that's through the advocacy work or the foundation or whatnot.
well, it's very interesting. One of the things that heard you say in a previous conversation was now your life is more rewarding than it was
Yes,
before the
yep,
injury.
yes, it's more fulfilling. Um, in a and I don't I don't say that tongue in cheek. I'm not trying to have a Pollyannic outlook, but before I got hurt, a lot of it was self-serving. I think like most of us, we have a career, we're working on bettering our situation, and that certainly hasn't gone away. Obviously, I continue to want to get stronger physically and certainly better myself. But now my outlook has become more just that, more outward, more focused on what I can do to help the greater good. And I don't say that with lofty aspirations. It's more by greater good. I mean, just hey, if I can run this foundation and be able to help one more individual today get the tools and the resources they need to be able to grow stronger and go about their life, then that's great. Then I've won the day. And there's a lot of fulfillment in that. As they say, we help ourselves by helping others, but you ask anyone that's kind of has a life of service, it feels good. I mean, I think psychologically, when you give a gift and you see someone's reaction, that always feels better sometimes than receiving a gift.
Oh,
And it's the same thing with service and in the work I've chosen to do.
yeah, getting back up, you've helped over 300 people continue their therapy, physical and mental therapy with spinal cord injuries because as it happened to you, your insurance ran out.
Yeah, it's I was in a nursing home, and the one thing that got me up and kept me mentally strong and excited to win each day was going to therapy and getting challenged. And one day the director of therapy comes to me and says, "Hey, your insurance isn't going to pay for this anymore. You've plateaued." And in their mind, I wasn't walking, let alone the fact that I had learned to breathe on my own. I had learned to tolerate standing up in machines with assistance, doing different activities, being able to get in my chair for a day and go out and take part, go to a baseball game or go to a restaurant without passing out. No, no, that didn't matter to them. They just figured, oh, if you're not walking, you're not getting better, so we're not going to waste our money anymore. And I'll tell you, Kevin, that was like getting, you know, I was like breaking your neck all over again because you've worked so hard to get to this point physically where you can start to see relief. You can start to realize, okay, I can live like this. It's not the end of the world. I am getting better. I might not be walking, but there's so many more important things that I've started to discover. And now it's like taking that, flipping that rug right from under your feet again. And that was a tough blow. And I was extremely fortunate that I had friends and family who came to the rescue with resources to help me continue to private pay for therapy. But that was the impetus for getting back up. And I realized there's a lot of individuals that are probably having the same conversation, but unfortunately, they're not in a position where they know people or have access to the resources they need to be able to continue their therapy. And that ultimately is what drove getting back up the idea. And I'm happy to say, like you mentioned, we've been able to help hundreds of individuals get the therapy they need. When insurance says no, we say yes, and that's really where we've been able to kind of carve our little niche and um, that leave that that greater good win that day each day by being able to help others that otherwise might not get that help.
Well, earlier we were talking about the mental strength that you have and how the mind is more powerful than the body. The thing that struck me when you said that the insurance comes to you and says, you're not walking, so we might not have the money anymore. That's spirit breaking, and your spirit is a hell of a lot stronger than
Absolutely.
your body.
Well, you're right, and I think that's also why I kind of titled the book "How a Broken Neck Strengthened My Spirit," because um, again, it's one of those things that I think I discovered how strong the human spirit, and in my case, how strong my spirit was by having to go through something like this. Unfortunately, you might not ever realize how incredibly strong the human spirit can be unless you go through adversity. But there's a quote I like to say that X-rays and MRIs can determine, they can tell you what's broken, but they can't judge or they can't show you how strong that the spirit is. That comes from mentally, that comes from somewhere inside of you, and that spirit is just as strong as anything else, and if not stronger. So, yes, it was spirit breaking, but I also realized, like I had alluded to earlier, okay, I got this. I've gotten through some pretty spirit breaking, pretty damning challenges in the past. This is just another one. I can get through this as well. And you fall back on those tools that you've accumulated along the way, those mental tools to start being able to apply to the job at hand. And that's what you have to do. You have to do a lot of compartmentalization and a lot of breaking things down into their simplest parts and not worrying about what's going to happen, even a day, week, month from now. Focus right now. What can I control? Let's get my
It's
mind
inch by
right and
inch. It's
yep,
inch by inch.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You have a very strong faith. I know that. And do you think that, because a recent guest that I had said, God doesn't do things to you, he does things for you.
I believe that. I believe that. And I think to individuals who might not have as strong of a faith or might not, have the same uh, idea of God that I have, they probably hear that and they're like, what does that even mean? I mean, what a bunch of hot air. But no, absolutely. It goes without saying that, like they say, God doesn't give you more than you can handle. I've questioned that a lot, trust me, because I certainly feel he gave me a lot, but I don't feel I've ever been alone in my journey. I was raised Catholic. I went all the way up to through Catholic high school. I had strong faith, and I one of the things I'm most proud of is that I haven't lost my faith. But I've also doubted a lot. I mean, I also laid in bed and I cursed God and I swore at him and I just wondered, I mean, if you are this great God, why would you do this to me? I mean, if this is what your will is, why is that? And you have those conversations. I think it's perfectly normal. But at the end of the day, I also realized, I can't do this alone. And my faith is what I believe gives me the strength, gives me the resiliency, helps fuel my spirit. And the last thing I want to do is go this alone and not have that co-pilot with me. And I think that's helped me kind of keep things in perspective, focus on my relationship with God. And all I got to do is look back at it and say, wow, all those years ago, those doctors pretty much wrote me off and they told me I would never breathe on my own again, probably never get out of bed again, never be able to eat. My life was pretty much over, just worried about making it comfortable. And I look at where I am today. And yes, there was a lot of hard work I put in to get here, and a lot of others helped me, but I also think that's God. I mean, I tell people sometimes miracles don't have to be these big, grandiose things that just happen right away. They can slowly reveal themselves over time. And I think, I think that's a testament to the position I'm in today, that I do believe God did work a miracle through me. And just because I'm not walking or I'm not diving into a lake again, I'm not back to where I am, um, doesn't mean that I haven't experienced a miracle. As you pointed out, and as I, added on, I feel my life's more fulfilled. I mean, I dove into a lake, broke my neck, was left for dead, and can honestly say today that I'm in a better situation, spiritually, mentally, emotionally. Now, I certainly have my moments, and we all still have bad days, but in the grand scheme of things, when I look back over the course of events that have transpired, I feel so much more fulfilled. And I think that if I didn't have God in my life, if I didn't have strong faith, I wouldn't be able to appreciate that, and I might not even be able to experience that.
So let me throw this your way. Get your reaction to this. All right. Jesus lived to be 33 years old. You dove in 33 inches of water at the age of 33. I said we're going to save lives today. Are you the savior reincarnated?
No, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. But I do believe that God and Jesus are working through me to help others.
Absolutely. There's no question about that.
Yeah, I firmly believe that. But and I've thought about the whole thing before with the 33 age, but no, because it is all relative. My story, as tragic as it started out and as challenging and as resilient as it may be, is just one story in millions. And I think God every day is working miracles with individuals. And just because I broke my neck and became paralyzed does not mean that my adversity or my challenge in life is any more great than anyone else's. As I've talked about when I give talks and when I speak with others, I mean, there's individuals out there dealing with mental illness on a daily basis. And in a way, they may wake up being more paralyzed than I am. There's others that are dealing with depression, might also be dealing with other health issues, like paralysis or ALS or cancer or something else. And a lot of those people are still choosing to wake up each day, to win that day, to focus on what they can control and to make the most out of it. And I just think that any one of those individuals you could look at and say they're a living testament of the power of God and God working through them to help others. So while I do appreciate a little of the irony of the 33 isn't lost on me, I just think if anything, I'm just an example or a chance to really help others understand and embrace the fact that God does work in mysterious ways, but God also gives us the tools that we need to thrive in a situation that might seem completely untenable and hopeless. So so I'm trying to do my best and you know appreciate the opportunity that I've been given and realize that there is a chance to use uh, tragedy and adversity to advocate, to teach, and to hopefully, help others, get a leg up in this crazy world.
So the fuzzy mic is all about mental health. It's about taking the fuzziness of our mental illness because I'm depressed,
Yep.
clinically depressed and suicidal ideation. So when I think about my bad times, my bad days, I'm going to think about you
And
and
I
you're
hope you do.
and
Yeah.
you're going to pull me through.
And I hope you do. And I hope that helps.
No,
And
it will. I mean, you
yep.
inspire me.
No, well, I appreciate that, and I want to come back to that word "inspire" in a second. But when I give my talks, I always talk about the absolute truths that a broken neck has taught me, and one of them is that it's all relative. Because when I'm having my bad days, I have some individuals I've met in my life who I think about them, and they pull me through. And I say it's all relative because you might think, oh well, mental health, that's nothing compared to being paralyzed in a wheelchair, but I'm thinking the opposite way. Oh, I'm paralyzed in a wheelchair, but fortunately, I have a strong mind, and I'm able to kind of to focus and stay the course. So it's completely all relative, and I hope you do use my story to help you because I use other people's stories to help me, and that's what at the end that's what we're all here for. And if it doesn't matter where you get your help from, or who you get it from, or how you get it, I think as long as that you're open to help, you're willing to receive it. And going back to the word inspire now, once you do get that help, you do something with it. Because a lot of individuals, they used to always tell me, people I'd meet, oh, you're such an inspiration. And I would tell them, okay, I appreciate that, but you opened up this can of worms now because inspire means to act. And if I'm going to inspire you, go act on it. Don't just say you're inspired because you're in my presence right now and you're kind of feeling sympathy or you're being, oh, I'm glad I'm not in your situation. No, when you're out there on a random Tuesday and something's going on and you feel at the end of your rope, act, then become inspired, then draw on this inspiration that you have. Because just because our paths have crossed and I may, wheel away and you go your way, doesn't have to mean that inspiration's ended. So if you want to tell me I'm an inspiration, I appreciate it. Thank you. But I'm going to challenge you right back to, go prove it. Go when you have those moments and you're not in the presence of someone else who you might think of as an inspiration. You now need to inspire yourself, and you now need to take what you've learned in those mental tools and use it to help yourself. And I always tell people, so that's the greatest compliment you can give me is if you want to tell me that I help you, well, let that continue to be the case after we've departed each other's company. So I hope you do continue to, when you're having your down moments, if you need to use me for an inspiration, please do. But realize that, it forces you to act. So, you now need to act on what you're feeling and find a way to help dig yourself out of that, knowing, hey, I've had bad days before. I can get through this. I just can't let myself get overwhelmed 1 inch at a time, and I'll get through it again. And then you wait, and inevitably more bad days will come. But I think as long as we start stringing together more good days, like you're certainly going to have those rainy days. That's fine,
Yeah.
and it just helps us appreciate. I will say, if I can add one more thing, I'm sorry for being a little long-winded here,
No, no, no. Yeah.
but there's moments where I might be sitting outside and just enjoying a sunset or uh, the weather or a campfire or whatever it is. And sometimes I think about how horrible the situation I did find myself in after I dove into that lake and how much my body was ready to give up and how broken I was and how beaten down I was. And I think about it and it helps me just appreciate the moment that I find myself in, sitting at that, staring at that sunset, realizing I was told I'd probably never see another sunset again. And wow, man, I was pretty messed up and I got through it. And I take a little bit of pride in that. and I allow myself to kind of, for the moment, just relish it, enjoy it. And then it also helps center me and keeps me focused on the now. And it's like, okay, I've been given this opportunity. Let's make sure that even when I do get depressed or I do have down moments, I'm not squandering the opportunity I have been given. So my point is that I think a lot of times looking back on our lowest moments can really help us more than we realize. If we don't dwell on them, but if we allow ourselves to just remember how low we were and then realize that we've gotten through that, it's such an incredible surge of just inspiration and hope to realize, okay, I can get through these awful, tragic, low moments in my life. And when they come again, you might not always be ready for them, but when it's time to deal with them, you know that you have that arsenal
Yeah,
to
it
be able
lets you
to
know
do
how
that.
far you've come.
Absolutely. I don't think enough people give themselves credit, whatever their situation is, to realize, how far they have come in their endeavors.
What are things you appreciate now that you didn't appreciate before the injury?
Um, I don't want to, the first thing would come to mind would be like my relationships with others, but I think I always did appreciate those, but now, especially specifically with my mother and father and sister, seeing how, and others that I've met, seeing just how much people are willing to help me and how much, especially my mom's, how much she has sacrificed to help me. I think I always appreciated that, but there's different levels of appreciation and the depth to which I can truly see now how much she's put her own life on hold to help me, is something I'll never be able to repay her for. So
I,
that goes without saying.
I don't
But
think
I
she would
also
want, I don't think she thinks about repayment. I think just seeing you breathe is repayment enough for her.
no, and you're absolutely right. But I certainly would love to be able to kind of just
Oh, of
help
course.
her go after and and go chase any dreams that she still has. But the relationships, that certainly goes without saying. But then it's other things like it's a sunny day. It's being able to sit outside and truly, like little things, just truly put my head back, close my eyes, and just feel the warmth on my face. Um, a good glass of wine with friends, sitting around a campfire, going to a great concert, uh, you know, seeing a good movie. It's all those little things. You always hear that cliche, like the little things are the big things, but they really are. I mean, it's those just enjoying a day, enjoying a moment, and especially when you're enjoying it and you're able to sit there and tell yourself to consciously recall the fact that I was told I'd never have these moments. That even helps you enjoy it even more. And I've been fortunate enough where I've been able to master that discipline so that when I am having a good time, you better believe it. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I'm always like, and I was told I wasn't going to have this good time, so I'm going to enjoy it more. But it really is those little moments that I can now appreciate that cliche, that those little things again. If there was a theme here, it's those inches. They really do add up and become the big things.
But man, you're not just enjoying little things. I mean, you went to Def Leppard and Journey. You had to have a hell of a time there.
Yeah, that was recently. That was a great concert. Yeah.
Another Kentucky Derby.
Uh,
Man,
I
you're
I'm
living
a
the
big
life.
fan of Derby. I'll tell you too. I always make the joke. Membership has its privileges. After I hurt my neck, it's probably about 3 or 4 years afterwards, I had the chance to meet one of my just idols, Bruce Springsteen,
No
and
way.
he came to Cleveland for a concert. And long story short, I had reached out to his PR for him, and when the concert was over, there was a tap on my shoulder. I turned around, and it was this usher saying, "Are you Scott Fedor?" I'm like, "Yes." He's like, "I need you to follow me." And I didn't know what was going on. I thought the guy was helping myself and my friends get to the parking lot to avoid traffic. But we get into this freight elevator, and next thing you know, we're going down, and it opens it up behind the stage. And I'm like, "Oh my God, is this happening?" And yep, sure enough, they say, "Wait here. Bruce will be out he wants to meet you in a little bit." And I was like, "You got to be kidding me." And yep, sure enough, he came out and came right up to me, said, "God bless you," kissed me on the head, and We just started telling stories about the concert, about music, about other things. Probably talked to him for about 10 minutes, and then, we went on our way. And I'm just like, it was his music. And I kind of mentioned that in the letter when I had written to his PR firm. I was like, when I was getting up every day to work out after a broken neck to try to learn inch by inch again, it was his music that I'd listen to on my iPod that would keep me going, that would motivate me, and just be able to have the chance to say thank you to him and tell him what, again, like I look at him as the inspiration.
Mhm.
So it is all relative, but yeah, so that was a great moment. And then just a lot of other things. I mean, you talk about living the life, whether it is going to concerts or sporting events, just the individuals I've been able to meet, the speaking events I've been able to attain, the different organizations I've been able to become involved with. There are a lot of very, very fascinating and remarkable people out there that I otherwise might have never crossed paths with and might never have thought to even want to cross paths with. So those are all again those miracles that they're not big and grandiose, but they reveal themselves slowly over time,
Well, there's
and
another
being able to
celebrity.
appreciate those.
There's another celebrity that you talk about in the book, and I'm wondering if you'll share the story about Dennis Bird and the biblical quote.
Yeah, absolutely. For those that that don't know, Dennis Bird was a he played for the back in the early '90s, late '80s, early '90s, played for the New York Jets. And when I was 16 years old, I'm dating myself here. When I'll let your listeners do the math. When I was 16 years old, it was actually 1992, and I was laying on the floor of my childhood home, flipping through the pages of Sports Illustrated. It was probably after a football practice or something, but I remember it was in December, and I was flipping through those pages, and I came across the story that had just been shared earlier that season. Dennis Bird had went for a tackle and broke his neck in an NFL game, and and he recounts in the story through the interview. He was laying on the field, just looking up at these worried faces and these expressions on his teammates, realizing that he just broke his neck, and then he kind of passed out. And he says when he woke up in the hospital, the first thing that he noticed, he looked above his head, and there was inscribed on a poster a scripture verse, Romans 8:18, which reads, "For I reckon that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory that shall be revealed in us." And he was a deeply religious, spiritual, faithful-filled man as well. But he kind of took that mantra and carried it with him throughout his rehab, and then ultimately walking out of the hospital and how he chose to live his life. And I'm this 16-year-old adolescent, but I was so moved by that scripture verse, and had always been a fan of positive mantras growing up, as I mentioned, and different sayings. But I actually got up, I typed that out, and we still use typewriters, onto a piece of paper, folded it up, and stuck it in my wallet. But I didn't forget about it. There probably wasn't a week or two at most that went by over the next 17 years up until the day I got injured, where at some point during the week I wouldn't pull that out, remind myself, take a breath, no matter how crazy things are getting with work, relationships, whatever. God does have a plan. Glory will be revealed. Right now, there's suffering you're going to go through, but it pales compared to what is in store for you if you keep the faith, fight the fight. And fast forward now 17 years later, I'm 33, myself, a former football player, obviously nowhere near the caliber of Dennis Bird, but I break my neck. I wake up in a hospital bed, and one of my family members had gone through my wallet, had taken out that verse, transcribed it, and what do you think the first thing that I saw was when I
Uh-huh.
woke up in a hospital bed was that same Romans 8:18. And you can tell me it's coincidence all you want, but I'll just say bull. The fact that that saying moved me that much and struck a chord with me as a 16-year-old, I continued to carry it with me all my all my life, to the point now where I wake up in a hospital bed, same similar situation Dennis had found himself in, and here I am looking at that same verse. It was it's just there's just too much divine intervention in there to think it's anything else. But again, it just serves as such a great reminder that the suffering for all of us, the sufferings of the present are not worthy to be compared with the glory, that shall be revealed in us. And it goes here on earth, I think, by working hard, good things will happen. And I think, as you relate to God in heaven, by believing and living a pious and a righteous life, and a just life, you'll have eternal life afterwards, and you will have, glory in the next. So it's just such a great story to share with others, and also a great reminder for me of that God does, to your point earlier, God does have a plan. He kind of does know what he's doing. And even though bad things may happen and we might not agree with it, um, these are all opportunities if we embrace them to find ourselves more fulfilled than we otherwise might have been.
Well,
And I'm fortunate that I've been able to do that and to share my story with others and hopefully help them learn and do that as well.
and you've always considered yourself, I know that you talk about this, a problem solver. And now you have other problems that you didn't have prior to the injury.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think you solved as a problem, and I love this about you, brother, is that you helped change Ohio law to allow for various service animals. And you actually had Melanie for a while.
I had Melanie, and Melanie was, at the time I got her, was a 28-year-old capuchin monkey. And there was an organization out of Boston called Helping Hands, and they're now called Envisioning Access, if anyone wants to check them out. But they trained these capuchins to help individuals with spinal cord injuries because of the intelligence of the animal, their small stature, and then how just ambidextrous and agile they are with opening things and closing things. Melanie was a capuchin monkey who lived with me for about 11 years and would help everything from turning on lights, wiping my face. If I told her, if I said face, I would keep a rag in my lap. She would itch my face. She could unscrew bottles, put straws in drinks, turn on DVDs. I would have a little pointer that I kept attached to my sip and puff here, which is how I drive my wheelchair. And I could click that electric pointer. It would aim at something. She'd run over and hit it, whether it was a button, whether it was a light switch, whether I had a spasm and maybe my foot was out of place in my foot pedal. They would spend about 7 years training these animals on these various commands before they would introduce them into someone's family. And Melanie is still around. She's still alive. She's back in Boston. It got to the point where after, a decade with me, I realized that, she was a great, great animal, and she had put her time in. And they live anywhere from 35 to 45 years in captivity. But I wanted her, she was getting ready to turn 40, and I wanted her to be able to just hang up her, her worker's badge and go enjoy her life. So she's living her best life. I keep in touch with the folks there, and from what I hear, she's certainly the alpha queen. She gets plenty of grooming and love from about a dozen other monkeys she lives with. She gets 3 full squares a day plus a lot of treats. Obviously, the greatest health care, and she's got a lot of enrichment activities that she's able to take care of. So, but the law was that right before I had gotten Melanie back in around 2010, 2011 in Ohio, there was an individual down near the Zanesville, Ohio, Columbus area who had a lot of exotic animals. And he was having some mental issues, it sounds like, and came home one day and just let them all loose into the city, and then ultimately ended up shooting himself. But I mean, no joke, they had lions and tigers and bears on the loose in Columbus. And they were eventually able to round some of them up. Unfortunately, some of them had to be put down. But I was all set to get Melanie, and then they said, no, we're not allowing this anymore. And I testified in front of Congress, or in front of the state assembly, and stated my case and kind of explained the fact of why I do think certain service exotic animals like this exceptions should be made, and the benefits they can provide for individuals with disabilities like myself. And fortunately, that it was passed into law that I would be allowed to have an exotic animal after all. So that was a chance to have a great impact on on something that could help others as well, and also a chance for me to open up my home to live with a little 12-pound kind of crazy little capuchin monkey. So it was a lot of fun.
Problem solver.
Well, I don't know if I was much of a problem solver as Melanie, because she found a way to weasel treats out of me all the time, and kind of get the best of others. But yeah, no, but I have always enjoyed finding a way that if there's a challenge, there's certainly more than one way to overcome it, and discovering those has always been a rewarding pastime for me.
You can go to Scott's website, scottfedor.com, to read some of the blogs that he's written. And if the answer is yes to this, I will wear it. Okay. But hopefully you do realize the irony in the way that you titled your Telich talk, A Deep Dive into My Mind.
Well, John Telich, he titled it that, but
He did.
he titled that. But when we were talking, he certainly he had been a former sportscaster, sports anchor in Cleveland, so he obviously, from a journalistic standpoint, very smart, intelligent guy, and he was even talking about the title of my book and how much he loved
Mhm.
the play on words with my book.
Headstrong.
Yep. And so when he did title it A Deep Dive into My Mind, he certainly knew what he was doing with that title. But yeah, I'm glad you did come across that, because he's another amazing guy. And when I was growing up playing football, he was one of the local sportscasters that would follow our team. So there was always a little bit of that connection there. And then all these years later, we got together and I was able to share my story. And since this, I haven't shared this, but since that time, I have spoken with him and his wife, and we've been kind of trying to put our heads together on other ways to not just help getting back up, but kind of help other individuals with spinal cord injuries, um, outside of the things that health insurance or the government might help provide. So how do we kind of get more resources towards individuals to allow them to live in a community, to live in a home of their choosing, as opposed to being institutionalized. So he wasn't just a guy that showed up and did an interview. He really kind of picked up the torch and carried it forward. And he's just an amazing guy. But yeah, when I first saw that, what he titled it as well, I
Okay,
was
so
like,
you chuckled too. I
I
felt bad
see,
when I
yeah.
chuckled.
No, I was like, I see what you did there, John. I appreciated it, and yeah, I certainly enjoyed the irony and the poetic waxing of the title that he came up with.
Well, scottfedor.com is where you can go to read these blogs and to see other conversations that Scott has had, because you put them up on your YouTube channel. And then also the book is Headstrong, How a Broken Neck Strengthened My Spirit. It's available on Amazon. It answers the question that you were posed to you by the doctor. Do you want to live? At
Yep.
which time you in your mind said, I don't. But Michigan has a law. I didn't know about this Michigan law.
Yep.
Please tell.
Yep. You're right. Right. So after I got hurt, and again, I was in the hospital for a couple of days, and I thought my life was over. Even though I was paralyzed, I was still in a tremendous amount of pain, and just all the demons that I was going through my mind, and the horrible thoughts and the ways of thinking this is what my life's gonna be like. I was just praying, dear God, please just help me find a way to die. And I was told that Michigan has a kind of a right to life law, if you will, that if an individual is on artificial life supporting means or other means, extraordinary means, keeping them alive, and they're lucid and of sound mind, they have that opportunity from the onset, the beginning, of choosing whether or not they want to expire or if they want to continue to live. And the doctor came into me, and I didn't even get that proverbial 1% chance of walking again. He just laid it right out there. He's like, Scott, you've had a horrible injury. You broke your neck. You're never going to walk again. You're never going to breathe on your own again. You're probably not going to be able to eat or swallow, get out of bed for more than a couple hours. Life as you know it is going to be all about trying to be comfortable. But any semblance you have, and he said this to me, of a normal life, you got to come to grips with it. It's gone. And I kind of was already telling myself that in my mind. But when you get hit with that by a doctor, a medical professional, wow, it just felt like I just got a death sentence. And he wanted to make sure that I understood it all. And I was, like I said, I couldn't breathe on my own at the time. I was very weak, didn't have the voice. So I was blinking my eyes. He's like, blink yes, once for yes, twice for no. Do you understand what I'm saying? And then he finally said, I know, I want to ask you a question. And, the question you alluded to, he said, do you want to live? And by all intents and purposes, I was fully prepared to say no. But again, divine intervention, and not just divine intervention, but having a voice. The first word I spoke was, yes, yes, I want to continue to live. And I don't know where it came from other than the Holy Spirit. I will believe that till the day I die and can have a chance to have God tell me, yep, you're right. Those were my words. I'm not done with you. So yeah, I really talk about that extensively in my book about do you want to live? And then that became for me, as I detail my recovery in the book and where I'm at with my life today, not just a one-time physically thing, do you want to live? But like I said, when you get up every day and what we choose to do and you know, the events or the experiences that I choose to get involved with and throw my resources, my time into. I mean, do you want to live? Do I just want to go through the motions, or do I want to find a way to continue to help others, continue to help myself, continue to try to, gather up those inches and move along and not just go through the motions, appreciate the things that I was told I would never be able to appreciate again. So in a sense, I feel like, I'm forcing myself to answer that question every day. Do you want to live?
Mhm.
Okay, go prove it now. So again, now like that Dennis Bird moment, that do you want to live conversation with the doctor again was something that, there's no other way for me to explain it other than divine intervention
Well,
and just
I found
coming
it
back on it.
interesting when I read that question, do you want to live? Would your answer have been different had they posed it, do you want to die? Because that's on your mind.
It's a great question. The short answer me would say no, because I believe that the divine intervention still would have come in there. But I think it does just go to the psychology
Mhm.
of, the psychological aspect of the way we frame things, the way we look at situations that we're faced with. Are we kind of, seeing the positive in what can be or the negative in what won't be? And fortunately for me, and maybe it was also divine intervention and that God had with the doctor and the way he had the doctor choose to answer those. But, you know, fortunately it was proposed from a positive slant. But that is a great question because yeah, at the time I did want to die. Whether or not I would have said that, who knows? But I think the real lesson in what you just pointed out there is how you choose to look at things because do you want to live versus do you want to die? Those are two totally different frame of mind,
Indeed.
totally different ways to go through life. And it again just shows how powerful the mind is and how powerful having the right attitude is
So
and framing that.
how grateful are you today that you made that answer 15 years ago?
Absolutely. I mean, I can't even put it into words. As I always tell people, especially when I'm speaking and they may look at me, I'm like, don't worry, the story has a happy ending, but I had to go through quite a lot to get there. And I don't think I ever would have realized. I may have started to realize, okay, I can have somewhat of a good life again, but I don't think I ever realized like how great of a life I could have. And don't get me wrong, I wish this had never happened. I'm not like, thank you, Jesus, for breaking my neck and putting me in a situation, but thank you, God, for being with me, for giving me the strength and for helping me get to where I am today. And thank you for allowing me that ability to be able to appreciate where I am today because I do love my life. And certainly there's things I still want to accomplish, still want to do, may never do, who knows, but it's not going to stop me from going after them. And I never thought I thought I might have gotten to a point where, okay, things are getting a little bit better. But no, if you would have asked me laying in that bed or even months afterward when I was in therapy, are you ever going to be able to thrive? I thought, no, if I was just surviving, that would be enough. But the situation I find myself in today is what's just absolutely amazing.
Here's what's impressive about that answer is that you said there are things that you may not get to do, but there are things that you may get to do. We're seeing
Yep.
advancements in exoskeletons. We're seeing
Yep.
advancements in brain implants. How
Yep.
in tune to that are you? And are you at the forefront of helping that happen?
Um, I'm I'm very in tune with it to the point where I actually had spoken with Elon Musk's company Neuralink and was with them as they had reached out to me about being one of the early participants. For those that don't know, Neuralink was putting chips into individuals' brains that would allow them to use their thoughts to control other things. And there's other reasons why I didn't choose to go through with it at that point in time. Still very intrigued with what they're hoping to accomplish in the future. But that's just one way of saying yes to your question. I'm very involved or very in tune with different things that are happening out there, and I do follow them. But a big change that I made in my attitude was I don't hang on their words or let my outlook on life or my ability to want to do things be controlled by how feasible some of these exoskeletons and other things may be. I'm going to live my life each day. I'm going to wake up, be happy I'm alive, and do things. And great if there's advancements, whether it's in medicine, science, biomechanics, whatever that can help me, then certainly I'm open to that and will eagerly explore it. But if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. It's not going to cause me to become depressed or cause me to lose hope because I'm gaining my independence, so to speak, and my strength and my attitude through things I think that are much more important and things that are within my control as opposed to how quickly science advances. So I'm certainly a proponent and advocate for science and for a lot of these groundbreaking technologies and hope they continue to get the funding, the support, the resources they need, and to a certain extent, you know, understanding from the federal government that, it's okay to want to try different things that might seem more unconventional because there could be a possible cure or a way to help other people out there. So I'm a big cheerleader for all of that, but I don't wake up hanging my hat on or my hope or letting my attitude be dictated by whether or not that does happen. And that wasn't always the case. Shortly after I got injured, all I wanted to do was read about stem cells and all this other stuff. But I finally learned and taught myself that acceptance of something doesn't mean you're giving up. And accepting my injury, accepting my situation doesn't mean I'm giving up. It just means I'm now able in a position to understand what I'm up against and work through it. And for a while, I did struggle with that, and that's why I was really into trying to find a cure, and you know, uh, a cure from outside rather than from my mind or from inside because I had to accept that things were different, and that made all the difference in the world as you can imagine, Kevin.
Well, I hope that you'll accept this, that you're even more of a badass now that I know you than you were before we started this conversation.
I
Brother,
appreciate that.
I can't thank you enough for joining me. I can't thank you enough for sharing your story and yourself. I said it before. I'm going to say it again. You're going to inspire me to look at my own life differently. And on days where I don't want to go on, I'm going to say, you know what? Think about Scott Fedor.
Well, I appreciate that. And I wish you obviously all the best in your continued journey and, all your listeners that are, we all struggle with challenges and adversity. And, if it helps to think of my story, think of your story, think of others that they may have come across that inspire them.
It's
It's
not so
okay to
much
use that.
it's not so much thinking about your story, Scott. It's about thinking about what happened after your story, about how strong your mind is, about how grateful you are. That's what I'm going to be thinking about. I'm not going to be thinking about Scott in a wheelchair. I'm going to be thinking about Scott thriving.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm glad that you're able to use that. I really am. And it's humbling, to hear you say that. But I certainly appreciate it, and thank you for the kind words, and certainly for this opportunity, just to hopefully reach some more people that are out there listening that could use it, and making a new friend, with you in the process. Like I said, it's a lot of relationships otherwise might not have been able to ever come across had this not happened. So
How about that? One of my favorite conversations ever. Scott's book is Headstrong, How a Broken Neck Strengthened My Spirit, and it's available on Amazon. To support Scott's organization, go to gettingbackup.org. And Scott's website, very simple, Scott W. Fedor, Fedor.com. Bookmark it so you can get his inspiring blogs as soon as he posts them. My thanks to Scott for joining me, and my thanks to you for listening. Tuesdays are about inspiration and overcoming. Wednesdays are all about laughter and comedy, which is what you get with the Tuttle and Klein podcast. Listen to it on the same platform where you're listening to this now. The Fuzzy Mike is hosted and produced by Kevin Klein. Podcast voice is Zach Sheesh from the Radio Farm. Social media director is Trish Klein. Next week, kind of a milestone episode number 100. I won't get into the statistical weeds with you right now about the significance of that number. I'll save that for next week. Ooh, stats and numbers, Klein? Wow, I just can't wait. I know. But I will say that only 6.73% of all podcasts, of which there are over 3 million, reach 100 episodes. So it's kind of exciting. Oh, and I'll be joined by a relatively well-known blonde actress who was in Playboy several times. Oh, and she also starred in Baywatch. Hope to see you then. And I'm grateful for your time.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Fuzzy Mike with Kevin Klein. Check back often and stay fuzzy, friends. Fuzzy Mike is a presentation of the Kevin Klein Fuzzy Mike Industry, Incorporated, LLC.